Welcome to the All Trades Jack channel. I am Reaction Jackson, and tonight we're talking about Doctor Who Season 2, Episode 3, The Well. And we're going to take a page out of Doctor Who's book, and we're going to pick up right where we left off last time. That's right, we jump into another cold open, but this one is hot. It is a hot cold open. We're getting right back to where we left off. I think so far Season 2 has taken place over just a couple of hours. Because each episode picks right back up where the last one was. And a lot of the things that we marked as being really cool about the last episode are really fun to see. We see a lot of those things happening again. The time hopping with the Vindicator. We're seeing more of that. They're keeping that theme going throughout each story, that they're just taking another hop. And this is just minutes later, or moments later from where we left off with the characters. They're doing this hop with the Vindicator to try to get, back home. And it's a great setup. We're still wearing the clothes from the last episode, but as soon as we figure out where we're going, we dress for the occasion. And this is the first time where dressing for the occasion is really, really paid off. What would have happened if they just walked in to that drop pod and weren't wearing those suits? Like, that was really lucky. It's not lucky. I mean, the Doctor has a closet with clothes for every time and place that you could possibly end up. So, of course, he's got spacesuits, but, you really needed them that time. So, again, I'm glad we're fitting in the fits to the story. The fits aren't just a thing that he does for fun. We're getting to involve the costuming a lot in the storytelling and getting a lot of use out of that wardrobe. Love it. And I like that they went with new designs. They didn't just do something easy. It would have been easy to grab the orange suit and call it a day, but they didn't. And they got this new suit, which I think, there's something slightly generic to it, but the production value is amazing. They look really good. They don't stand out necessarily like the orange spacesuit, the David Tennant orange spacesuit from, where did he get? Does he get that from Sanctuary Base? I think he does. Yeah, the Satan Pit. Anyway, it's cool to see the use of the wardrobe so early on in the episode. We have to talk about these intimate moments inside the TARDIS, because they're doing a lot of work for the character development. They're doing a lot of work for the relationship between the Doctor and Belinda. A lot is being done in these little moments, these little conversations. But that's not all that's happening in these little moments and these little conversations. That's right, Musical Watch 2025 has not ended yet. I was ready to throw in the towel after last week. I really thought, okay, here's another musical number, but we're never going to get the Doctor Who musical. Oh, my friends, it's happening. If you don't think it's happening at this point, it's happening. The season finale, there's going to be a musical. You just watch. We're talking about her dad wanting to get back to Belinda's dad to hear him singing. And by the end of the night, everybody is singing. And that the Doctor promises, that promise from the trailer that we all just assumed was him making a standard Doctor promise. I'm gonna get you home. I'm gonna keep you safe, which is what he's promising. But what he's actually promising is that what he said right before he said, I promise, is that they would all be there laughing and he would do the singing. So I'm expecting a musical number from the Doctor by the end of the season. That he said, I promise. I've got it underlined. I've got that. He made a promise. And, Belinda even said you can't make that promise. And he doubled down. So I'm keeping the Doctor to his word. I'm getting my musical before the end of the season, right? Again, I don't need a musical, but with all these drops, all these hints, come on, you can't tell me that he's not queuing me up for a musical finale here. But we like the Vindicator, that arc. It's cool. I think it's really cool the way that they're jumping from place to place using it. I think it adds a new dynamic to the time travel, which is always fun to freshen up the vibe of the show. It reminds me of the various different times in the classic era where time travel was restricted. The TARDIS needed a piece because the Time Lords took it, or or sometimes it was just the Doctor lying because he wanted to travel and he's like, oh yeah, I'm out of Mercury. which is kind of funny. Is that a connection to this episode, isn't it? I didn't think about that. Yeah, the first Doctor, he couldn't get Ian and Barbara home, and I'm pretty sure he pretended he needed Mercury from the city. I might be thinking of the Peter Cushing one. But correct me if I'm wrong. We'll come back around to that one. Maybe we'll revisit it in a season wrap up video. We'll see if I had anything there. Right, moving right along. We get the closet scene. They get dressed. Of course, Brittany comes on, and you know I'm loving that. You know I'm loving Toxic, which is a good throwback as well, because they were just talking right before they went off to go get dressed. They were talking about the human race and its survival and what happens to Earth and Earth in the future and the legacy of Earth. And those were all questions that Rose was dealing with in the episode The End of the World, where this song played, where the Britney Spears song played, Toxic. So yeah, that's an interesting connection there. He said, there will always be people. And that was kind of the promise of that episode, and especially the various different follow-ups to that episode, the other, like New Earth and the other ones that follow that era of humanity. So it was interesting to see that and to hear that, to get those callbacks to that. And then once we get into the actual action of the episode, they're inside the pod. I love that scene. The Helldivers scene was really cool. The fact that they dropped onto this planet and they didn't have the TARDIS, it was reminiscent of a lot of episodes, obviously. That's a really good setup always, is to get the Doctor away from the TARDIS or to get the sonic screwdriver out of play. The more things you can do to tie hands behind the Doctor's back is always going to work out better for the script, because you don't want them to be too powerful. You don't want the Doctor to have too much going for them. And one of the easiest ways you can nerf them a little bit is to take away the TARDIS. So I like the Helldivers look. I liked the drop shock troop thing, like the ODST thing going on. That was really cool. And the way that they kind of floated at the bottom, I wasn't sure about the effect, but in theory, I like it. I thought it was kind of cool, especially the final shot. A couple of the close-up shots didn't look great. It looked a little bit community theater, but from a distance, those wide angles of the group coming down in a pod, those looked really good. I thought those looked pretty cool. There was a few mentions right at the beginning, and we're gonna get into some spoilery stuff, but there was a few mentions right in the beginning that kind of gave away the game of where we were. There had been some, I don't know if they were leaks or if they were fan theories or if they were just rumors going around that this was a sequel to Midnight. But I try to stay away from stuff like that. I see a lot of stuff because I listen to podcasts and things like that, and I listen to other YouTubers, and they sometimes bring that kind of stuff up. I try not to follow up on leads and things like that because I don't really like being spoiled. I'm doing this reaction right now at 4 a.m. because, I watch the episode and I get my thoughts out immediately. I don't like having my thoughts intermingled with other stuff until after I've had a chance to process them. So I try not to read too much into spoiler stuff, but I know that this was something that was going around pretty hotly. So I was maybe primed for it, but as soon as they said, carbon-46 and galvanic radiation, I was like, oh, yeah, a radioactive planet that's covered in complex carbon structures. Okay, so like Midnight, yeah. So they kind of gave the game away pretty early. If you were, maybe again, I was primed for it, but it wasn't, the twist later doesn't hit that hard because I shouldn't complain about this because, I was saying the other day about having mysteries you can't solve. And this is a good example of a mystery you can solve. This is a good example of a mystery that there's some evidence that you can go back and be like, yep, absolutely. They talked about the complex carbon structures. So the idea that this was once a diamond planet, absolutely. We can buy into that. And so I got to give them props for that one. That was pretty cool. I wish I hadn't seen stuff online because, yeah, I do think that I was primed for that, and maybe it gave it away sooner than it would have if I went in blind. If you went in blind, let me know how that reveal worked for you. Let's see. Oh, We have the line "Hope is irrelevant," and I'm gonna have to go back and check Lux, but I think something has been irrelevant in every episode because the cat was irrelevant, and I want to say the fans were irrelevant. Someone might have said that they were irrelevant because they didn't exist, and then and Hope is irrelevant. That's a running thing is irrelevance. We'll see if that turns into anything. I just write down things that I happen to notice, and that was one that stuck out to me. It's like, I had remembered for sure that the cat was irrelevant, because I laughed so hard at the cat was irrelevant line. Even though I have a cat, you all may have seen him around. I'm looking around like he's going to show up. He doesn't play like that. But I have a cat, and so when that scene happened in Robot Revolution with the cat, yeah, it was sad, but the robot saying the cat was irrelevant, that cracked me up. And it's the first thing I thought of when she said hope is irrelevant. When the captain said hope is irrelevant, that was the first thing I thought of. They set the mystery up really well with building tension, showing the dead body, showing that some of them were killed with laser blasts. Some of them were killed with kinetic attacks. Well, they don't know it was kinetic attacks. They just know that they've got broken bones and snap necks. And that all pieces together really nicely, and it sets up the tension really well in that scene. And the music is doing a lot in this episode. I was complaining the other day about Murray Gold doing too much at weird times, but this was not an example of this. This was Murray Gold on top form. The music really helped to build the tension in a lot of scenes, and really helped to sell the environment and really bring it to life. And when they are going around, there's a line where someone says they're coming up to the door behind which Alice Fenley is, and someone says that line about it could be a survivor. I think it's Belinda says it could be a survivor, and then one of the soldiers says it could be the killer, and the doctor says it could be both. And now that does end up being true, so that could just be foreshadowing to the fact that both the killer and the last survivor are there. But on its face, if you just take it like, if you remove the idea of foreshadowing and you just think about, like, why would the doctor say this? Like, what is the reason the doctor would say this thing? Because the doctor can empathize with that position. The doctor was a killer and a survivor in the Time War. Of course, that all kind of gets undone by the 50th, but by the day of the doctor. But still, that idea that the doctor knows that sometimes to be the survivor is also to be a killer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a killer. That could be a byproduct of being a survivor. And I like that the doctor kind of like notes that's not necessarily it's not something necessarily worth distinguishing.
Started well, that sentence.
It got away from me, yeah.
But let's get into Alice Fenley, because we mentioned her. Yeah, she's the one behind the door. She shows up, and right away, wow, what a great character. I thought she was really compelling right from the start. I thought that she was just the right amount of like standoffish with the characters. She wasn't like because again, she knows she has the thing on her back. If we look forward and then try to look at the story from her perspective, she very deliberately doesn't move at first. Like she stays very straight, and like she knows what'll happen if she turns her back on them. And that body language, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again, but that body language, which kind of looks just stiff and scared at first, now thinking about it, is very like controlled and scared for a completely different reason. But there is this tension in the air as soon as you see her. Like, she looks like she's in a hostage negotiation from the second she shows up. And, the fact that she is deaf, obviously that plays a huge part into why she is the survivor, which is pretty interesting. I think that's an interesting idea. but the fact that she is deaf plays into also the social side of the interaction of the characters, and it brought out a lot of really cool concepts that I thought was really great. I loved the technology, that idea that was something that you would have, that just as a part of your basic kit, like they all had it. The word projection screen, I think that's crazy cool. And I think the idea that like everybody would just have that, but also that a nurse should also be able to sign without that, that was all really cool. Like just the idea that in that far off future, and we talked about this in a previous video, that in a far off future, that kind of stuff would just be so normal and integrated that there are just parts of your daily wear and parts of the law that would account for stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. And especially since we're doing a far-flung future story, like, why not take advantage of that setting, the way that Star Trek does, and it gives you a little bit of hope and optimism to look at the future and be like, oh, we have some things to look forward to. It's going to be scary, but hey, there's things to look forward to, So I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a great addition, and that's the kind of stuff that I love to see in the show. Oh, before we move on to the next scene, one more note on Alice Fenley. I thought one other thing I just randomly noted was when she mentioned she was a cook, and she talked about like what her preparation was. It was just protein and salt. And again, it was one of those things where they're just keywords at this point that are flagging in my brain, and I don't necessarily know what to do with it. But as soon as she said salt, I was thinking of Wild Blue Yonder, and I was thinking about the not things. The Nothing People that were the David Tennant and Catherine Tate clones. And they are very similar. They are very similar to the Midnight Entity, aren't they? Because they both copy, and they both are trying to become something more complex, coming from nothing. And the whole thing about Midnight, the thing that people couldn't get past was how anything could live out there. There was no way anything could live out there. Or another way of saying that no thing could live out there. Is this a stretch? I don't know. She said salt, and it was the first thing my mind went to. And the fact that it is a sequel to Midnight doesn't necessarily mean that couldn't be the case still, that it couldn't also be a sequel to Wild Blue Yonder. Maybe they're all part of the same continuity. They're all part of the same story arc. And I don't know where it would all fall together. I haven't thought about it beyond just tonight. I heard the word salt, and it all started coming together. But just the idea that there are these multiple creatures that have that same modus operandi, where they are trying to copy, mimic, become. And they said they knew the Doctor's name, or the Doctor said they knew the Doctor's name. And I got to wondering about that, because we got our Tears from Shooty this episode. It's every other. He's maintaining an every other episode cry ratio, which I really respect. He's maintained it through last season and into this season. So he gets to cry in this episode, but the thing that triggers it is them saying, they know my name. And I wrote down, name Doctor or real name ? Because if they know his actual name, well, we're cooking now. I mean, the Midnight Entity could have learned his name, because in that episode, it almost perfectly copied him to the point it was speaking with his words. So it could have, I guess, learned his true name by learning his mind like that. Maybe. Although if it was also in the Wild Blue Yonder episode, if that was the same creature, depending on when it is in the timeline, that would also be just another opportunity to learn his brain, because that Midnight, that entity, the No Things, they knew about the Timeless Child, and they knew about all that other stuff. They were getting deep into the memories. They were very capable. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about just the idea of these kinds of creatures, this class of creatures, you know. And there's a lot of callbacks with this whole episode back to Donna Noble stuff, Donna Noble era episodes, which, I mean, it was RTD, so of course. But I can't be the only one who was thinking you've got something on your back from Turn Left, or throughout that whole season, there's something on your back, right? So even that, there's things that keep tying back into that era of the show, which is cool. But again, we have to talk about this at some point. I will make the video on it about the idea of coming into the show with this iteration of the Doctor, with this iteration of the show, season 1. You know, treat this as season 1 and watch it. We're going to talk about it. I promise we are. But this is another one of those instances where it's like, you know, you've only got 8 episodes this season, and you did one of them for a sequel to an episode that happened forever ago. Just like, you know, Empire of Death was a sequel to an episode that happened forever ago. And so was The Toymaker. Like, and it's cool. Like, I am glad we're getting these stories. I, as a fan, am enjoying them. But we do have to talk about what this would be like if you were watching this as season 1. Try to put yourself in those shoes. Especially, you know, and you know me, I get preachy about people, you know, who don't have the means to have a bunch of streaming services. I complain about this all the time in my videos. But if you're a person who can't afford, or your family can't afford, a bunch of streaming services, and you discovered Doctor Who on Disney, because Disney is what we've got, because Disney has Hulu, and it's got your sports for, you know, people who want that, and it's got kids stuff for the youngins. And so you discover Doctor Who season 1, and you get this, and you get this flashbacks to David Tennant and to Miss Silvestri, who you've never seen before. And then you can't go back and watch the episodes unless, I guess, go buy the DVDs or buy another streaming service. You know what I mean? Like, we'll talk about it more. I think it's cool. I'm personally glad we did this episode. And for what it's worth, I think it's a strong sequel. I think a lot of the time sequels, they damage their originals' reputation or their legacy. And especially with this kind of thing, you didn't want to throw off the creature's mystique. And I don't think we did. I think the fact that I'm sitting here speculating about, oh, maybe it's the No Thing, and somebody else is sitting in their room right now speculating about maybe it's some other thing that I haven't thought of. You know, the fact that we're sitting here theorizing now means that the mystique is still intact. So this is a good sequel episode. Not complaining about that. Top marks for a sequel episode. This is Terminator 2 level sequel material. But it's a sequel in season 2, and that was in series 4, you know, and they're on different streaming services. I'm just saying, think about it. Think about it. But on the note of the creature being ominous, can we just talk about how ominous this creature was? Such a good creature concept, and it's a good evolution of what we've already seen before. It's not like, you know, the Weeping Angels, who we got in Blink, and they were so cool, and they had very specific rules, and they had limitations, but they were also all powerful, and you really felt that. And then the next time we see them, they're snapping necks, and they can talk through people's voice boxes, and it's like, it's not really a natural evolution. This is a natural evolution, which is what I was talking about with it being a very good sequel. This is a natural evolution of the creature, I think, and it really works because it's still building on everything that was strong about it, but it's taken on some new tricks, and those define the way the story is told and allow it to be a different story while pulling on all the same themes. You know, group panic, paranoia, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think it was really cool the way they use this creature's it's not its limitations, but it's the very specific nature of its abilities. It is a parasite, and parasites are the most specialized kinds of creatures. So it's really cool to get into the nitty gritty of how does this thing work? What is this thing doing? I really enjoyed that, and I loved the way the paranoia was shot, the way they were kind of jump scares, which I'm usually not too big of a fan of, but they were effective. They were effective jump scares, and the music and the sound design really worked to sell it. So I got no complaints about that. I really enjoyed that. I'll take a jump scare, especially like if you can make it work and make it scary. Like, it was a scary episode. You know, it wasn't like hide behind the sofa of relative comfort, but it was very like eerie. It was very unsettling. It was unnerving, and the music and the jump scares, they added to that. I don't think that was detracted from it in any way. And I couldn't help also thinking when they were all being, we're talking about group panic being one of the themes of the episode. We do have to note, it's point of interest, that this was also one of the themes of Boom, where Monday Flynn, the other character that is played by Varada Sethu, that was a whole thing. They were fighting each other because they were scared of the mist. They were scared of the mud, and the algorithm took advantage of them and sold them weapons to fight each other. So this is another one of those recurring themes that are coming back, that are tying back to Belinda. We were talking about a few of them last episode about things that were recurring that tied back to Belinda, and specifically to the Monday Flynn character. I think that I don't think we're done with Monday Flynn. We're gonna see her again before the season's over. I think the back half of the episode was some pretty classic Doctor Who fare. It was a lot of running through corridors and, you know, setting up the trap with the mirror, with the Mercury mirror. All that stuff was really cool, but it did play kind of not generic. It just kind of played kind of how you'd expect for a Doctor Who episode to play out. Which again, that's fine. You know, I think it's classic Doctor Who. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they do add that last little bit of tension right there at the end, as those last four are waiting for the airlock or the decontamination, whatever it is, and one of them gets contaminated, and they all know it. That last little bit of tension, that's a great way of like continuing to ratchet up the tension and not let it be alleviated too fast, so they don't just get the fix and then it's all fine. Now, once of course they're off, there's a couple little scenes in the spaceship that I thought were pretty good, because we still have the fear that that thing made it off with them, that whatever the entity was, that it still got off the ship, or maybe there was more than one of them. You know, who knows? If my theory is right and they're not things, there were two of those not things. So, you know, who knows? Maybe one of them got away. But even otherwise, even if I'm totally wrong and off base, it doesn't matter. Something clearly got off the planet. So that was interesting. But also, I'm going to give some points today to Mrs. Flood. And that may be surprising to anyone who's been watching these, because I've been dunking on Mrs. Flood because, as I've said before, I don't care. But the reason I don't care is because, for the most part, like, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't actually take any actions in the story. She doesn't actually have any impact. Most of the characters don't know she exists. The ones that do don't know she's nefarious or anything. They don't know anything about her. We all speculate, but nobody in the show is speculating, you know, and she hasn't done anything to move the plot, or if she has, we haven't gotten to see it yet. This is probably one of those, like, I'll tip my hand later to let you know I did something things, but we'll see. But this episode, she actually did do something, kind of, by asking about the Vindicator and implying that that's part of her plan. So she has a plan. That's something. That is absolutely something. I'm gonna give her points for it. It's not much, but I am gonna give her points for it. So also, you know what? let's go ahead and while we're here, let's double down on giving a crap about Mrs. Flood. Okay, I thought of this the other day, and I don't know if anybody else has already said this, but there was a line from the Robot Revolution that kept coming back that has me asking the question, who is Mr. Flood? You know, everyone's asking about who is Mrs. Flood, but who is Mr. Flood? Because is she married? Yes, she is. Mrs. Flood. Miss Belinda Chandra, Mrs. Flood. So, y'all want to know who Mrs. Flood is, and that's fair. I want to know who Mr. Flood is. So, you know, put in the comments your theories. Who is Mr. Flood? Why does she want a vindicator, I guess? You can answer that too. Why does Mrs. Flood want the vindicator? I don't know. I'm sure there's a very interesting reason. But more interesting, who is Mr. Flood? Let's see, anything that I missed? What did I miss in this episode? I was heartbroken when Alice says, "Don't turn your back on me." That scene was so hard to watch when they all just turned their communicators off and turned around. That was so harsh. And it was so hard to watch, but also it was just really clever writing, because that whole scene before that, we were talking about if you're behind her, essentially if she had your back to you, it would be deadly. And I liked that we communicated that you turning your back on her, while it's not deadly, it's still kind of like almost violent, you know, especially because we're talking about people who are paranoid and thinking there's a monster and talking about shooting through her to get to it. And now they're turning their communicators off and turning around, turning their back on her. It's violent. And I really love that got a spotlight on it. Like, I really am really happy with the way that they use this in the story, and I'm gonna love to see some reactions from people in the deaf community who watch Doctor Who to see how this works for other people, because again, those are the people who get to say. I don't get to say what is good representation for anybody other than, you know, Pinoy boys with hair down to their butts. That's who I can speak for. But I still want to see good representation in general, and I think this was good. But I'd love to hear the opinions of people who are in the know. But I love that. Again, like I said, you couldn't ask for a better sequel to an episode from that long ago. I think it really stuck the landing, and I'm feeling good about this week's episode. I was feeling kind of, you know, if you watched last week's reaction, I had a hard time processing it, but I'm feeling good with this one. You know, it's almost 5 a.m. here. As you can tell, I'm running out of juice and slurring my words and tripping over myself. But you know, I'm ready to go to bed and have scary Doctor Who dreams, because this brought me right back. This is exactly what I needed. This is the exact kind of episode I needed to get me feeling excited about the season again. You know, I felt really good out of Robot Revolution, felt a little bit weary out of Lux, but now I'm feeling better coming out of this one. And you know, the stinger for next week, you know, we'll I mean, it's exciting to see Ruby again. I like to see a tag team episode where there's multiple companions. So if we get some crossover between these two companions, that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how they jive, because a lot of people have pointed out just how different Ruby and Belinda are, where Ruby is like, you know, worships the ground the Doctor walks on, and Belinda is not having any of it, you know? So I'm interested to see that. I'm also interested to see how this crossover is happening, where they're at if they couldn't get home. Like, how are we seeing Ruby? Where are they ending up? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where they end up. Maybe they land in 2024. I don't know how it's gonna work. I am curious. I'm curious to see how that all shakes out. But I'm excited for next week. I'm feeling good about this week. I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning because I can start going on the internet and checking out what everybody else said. But on that note, I want to thank you all for coming in and having this conversation with me. I look forward to seeing what you say in the comments down below. And let's talk about it. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your theories. I want to hear you tear apart my theory. The no things theory. Does it hold any weight, or should you take it with a pinch of salt at the edge of the universe? I don't know. You tell me. But anyway, like I said, it's way past my bedtime, so I'm gonna check out. Signing off here, and I will see you in the next one.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Subscribe.
What?
Click below to subscribe.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe.
Well, how could I possibly forget that? For goodness sake. You got the message, haven't you?